Like,
Mm.
we're in this system that's, like, rooted in capitalism and being for profit, and so the things that our system will value are the things that generate, like, financial productivity. And so if we know that to be true, then we're like, we kind of are existing in this paradox if those aren't necessarily the values that brought us to healthcare. And so we think about this as like kind of like radical reclamation of like, what are the values that brought me into healthcare?
I'm so thrilled to invite the two amazing ladies from Introspective Spaces. Laura, can I ask you to introduce yourself first and then we'll go to Anu?
Yeah, sure. I'm Laura, and I'm a public health nurse, and I live in Sacramento. And I met Anu many years ago, probably like 15 years ago now, and we co-founded Introspective Spaces 4 years ago. So I have two kids, and this is my third child. So
Yes. Yes. Oh my God.
Introspective Spaces is your third child. I
it
love
is.
that.
It is.
Totally.
Anu, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, also honored to be here with y'all. So my name's Anu, pronunciation hers. I'm a pediatrician here in Los Angeles and training at Stanford. So Alyssa and I were in the same orbit, but I don't think we knew each other back in that time. And yeah, I work clinically taking care of newborns and premature infants, and then also have a child, and our second child is introspective spaces at this time.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I feel like that Introspective Spaces kind of came onto my radar, I think through Instagram. Like you all started posting some things, and I knew some other people who were also in your orbit. And I was like, these people are doing the stuff that I'm trying to do. And I love that.
Well, we have the
Um,
reverse experience because we're like,
Exactly.
moral injury clinic coming soon. We're like,
We're like, wait a minute.
person. We're like probably the first people on your website, and just a guess. We're like stalking you from the start. So
well,
it's pretty magical to be here. Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
it's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, and then I know that you and Laurel did that op-ed, like, kind of like personal narrative workshop a few years ago that I attended. And so then I was like, wait a minute, any friend of Laurel's is someone that is just a stellar A+ person.
Oh, well, we're talking about Laurel Braitman, who's an incredible memoirist and medical humanities person who we just all love. And yeah, it's so great. I agree. Any friend of Laurel's is a friend of mine.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been doing moral injury work at Stanford for many years, and moral injury clinic is really something that came out of feeling like it cannot be this thing that we only do in our own little hospitals, our own little spheres. Like we need ways to connect not only across our professions but just across our communities. How is it that we're going to survive and thrive ideally? Despite the downfall of democracy, that's what I'm saying these days.
Yeah, literally.
Doing my darndest to just survive despite the descent into fascism.
Indeed.
Anyways, so one of the things why I wanted to bring you both here today is because you have this amazing program called The Artist Way for healthcare workers, and I wonder if one of you could just give a quick, like, what is that?
Yeah, Laura, go for it.
It's like the hardest question to answer.
I know.
Because it doesn't fit in any box. But I love how you were just talking about like the silos that we all exist in, both in our profession and across institutions. And I think this is our time. There's so many wonderful things happening inside of institutions, and Anu and I are so excited and supportive and uplifted by these initiatives and individuals. And we're in the unique space where we've chosen to exist outside of the system. And so the Artist Way is bringing people together across institutions, across the medical hierarchy, outside of that space into a more where you can bring not only your professional side, but your personal side as well, which is just really rare, where you can bring both parts of yourselves to other healthcare workers. And so practically, it's 12 weeks of committing to another small group of healthcare workers to travel with, where you meet once a week, usually virtually. There's also asynchronous options too, where you're checking in about building a creative path. I've tried to do that alone. Many people have tried to do that alone. It's near impossible. Yeah. I used to shame myself for that, that I couldn't, have enough self-will or power to, "Why don't you just do this?" And I realized that I need accountability, and that's not a weakness. That's
Mhm.
actually, just the way that we've done it, for a long time. So that's what we're the underpinnings of what we're trying to create, and we're
Mhm.
using the book, The Artist's Way, as a tool, to center that community. Julia Cameron talks about workaholism, perfectionism, spirituality, codependency, money, anger, jealousy. So we're kind of dealing with all these topics,
Mhm.
through the lens of creativity and these questions that we don't get to really talk about, but are so pertinent to our clinical work. We have a supportive, private space, to accompany each other while we actually make space for those questions. And then in the end, we try to in person, we try to group people geographically by city. So then we host an in-person celebration. Right now we have, I don't know, maybe 7 cities or so that we're doing this fall. Um, so that's kind of a quick overview. I knew if you wanted to, if I missed anything.
No, I think that was a great summary. I think the only things I'll add is I think our dream for what we hope this is that people build a community of care. And so I
Mhm,
think that's one
mhm,
of the big
mhm,
models for us is we know that a lot of the wellness initiatives that have traditionally taken place in healthcare institutions have been very individually focused.
mhm,
And so I think that's a really interesting tension because, of course, we have a lot of agency as individuals, but so much healing always historically and in present day happens in community. And so part of this work is helping people like essentially find the people and like build that community like where you are. And with the hope that these are actual friends in your
mhm,
life that you have beyond the program. Like the 12 weeks are just like a way to build that cadence and consistency and to like reconnect maybe with parts of your identity that you don't get to access very often. But then the real value and the real joy for us is like seeing people become actual friends. Just like for Laura and I, like our friendship is very influential in like how we practice because I think we're like, oh yeah, like I understand what nurses go through and I understand what
mhm,
different people go through because I've
mhm,
heard their stories and experience. And so when I'm in the hospital, the way that I communicate and interact with people is fundamentally shifted by that. And so I think that's one of the values that we hope we can have because where else in healthcare do you get a chance to like
mhm,
make like do art with like your friends who are physical therapists and
mhm,
chaplains and
mhm,
psychiatrists and like know each other in this different way.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
and
what
that's
you go ahead, Elsa. Sorry.
Oh, one of the things so I participate I mean, you both know this, but for folks who are listening, I really enjoyed participating, that we all hung out at a nursing ethics conference, which was so cool, and you
Mhm.
all had invited me to participate in the Artist Way cohort. I was in Laura's cohort, I was very
Mhm,
lucky.
mhm,
And it was so great, and I actually met quite a few people from work that I had never met before because we work at oftentimes these super big organizations, and then there was somebody else who was in our group who did not work at our organization, but now does, and so
Wow.
that community of care and that creating those bonds has been so powerful. There's also you all had, like, a text message thread that went with it that was very, very
Mhm.
fun. I love a group chat. Not everybody loves a group chat, but I love a
Well,
group
everyone
chat.
loves, yep.
Love a group chat. And sharing some of the art that we had made and sharing some of the things that we had come up with. And for folks that don't and ironically, when you talk, Laura, about trying to do the artist's way by yourself and how hard it is, and Laurel Braitman and Laurel had done it before.
mhm,
My mom did this like back in the 90s. So I vaguely remembered this book. And Laurel was telling me about it and she was like, "Oh, have you done the artist's way?" And I was like, "Oh no, my mom did it, but I remember it." And so I ended up getting a copy of the book and her and I were planning to do it together, but we didn't have this like scheduled check-in. We were just sort of like, we would text, be like, "Did you do your morning pages? Like what's happening?" And
Cute.
but both of us are so busy that we kind of it kind of, we fell off the wagon is how it felt. And so I really when you
mhm,
invited me to be in the artist's way, I was like, I don't have time for this and I desperately want to do it. And I was like, oh my God, I turn into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock and these sessions are at like 8 o'clock at night. Like, but and I get up at, 5 o'clock in the morning most of the time. So I but I chose to do it anyway because I thought, "You know what? I'm just gonna lean into this because I just am so excited about what the 2 of you are doing, and I'm so excited about the people that you're bringing together, and the fact that it's interdisciplinary." I love that, and I love that the 2 of you come from different disciplines in healthcare and how
Mm.
we're sharing these spaces, we're sharing these experiences, and yet there's so many things about the ways that our organizations are structured and the way that our jobs are structured that are these like false barriers between us that
Totally.
I totally feel like you all are just like, no, we don't need those.
Yes, I think one of our operating questions is like, what if humanizing healthcare starts by humanizing one another? And
Mm,
um, like that's our end goal is like we all want to work in a more humanizing healthcare system. There's 1,000 ways to get there. This is kind of the one we hit on for the moment. And
Mhm.
yes, many people, including myself, just have expressed how radical it is to just get to know each other as a human first. And like
Mhm.
as Anu already talked about. So yeah, it's really special.
what would you all how many cohorts have you all done now?
This will be our 3rd cohort this fall.
And what would you say you've really learned and realized along the way of, gathering people from all over the country?
I think a lot of people kind of approach this program with a lot of the same concerns that you brought in of like, I desperately want this, but I don't think I have time. And so I think that's like one of the things that we like validate is that we're in this system that is never going to inherently reward the things that we need to be sustainable in it. That's kind of the
Mm,
paradox, right? Like
mm,
we're in this system that's like rooted in capitalism and being for profit. And so the things that our system will value are the things that generate like financial productivity. And so if we know that to be true, then we're like, we kind of are existing in this paradox if those aren't necessarily the values that brought us to healthcare. And so we think about this as like kind of a radical reclamation of like, what are the values that brought me into healthcare? How do I center those things with other people? But this goal of being sustainable. And I think we've seen that really play out in the cohorts and some of the stories that people have shared with us of just really coming back to their healthcare system and their even their role and thinking about, is there a better way for me to do this? Like, can I stay in healthcare? But like, can I maybe like think about how creativity can be a tool for processing and like carve that time out? Like, can I use my lunch break to actually eat lunch and not catch up on my notes? Can I reach out to colleagues at work and maybe share a little bit more about myself than I would have otherwise? And so we think about all the ways, like both big and small, it has impacted folks. And then consequently, like how many patients will be impacted downstream who are able to like work with healthcare workers who are really thinking about these questions of sustainability. And so for some people, it even means like, how do I really amplify the ways that I advocate for a more just system inside and outside of my healthcare role? Because I think the way we define creativity is really broad and I think is just this act of engaging with something that, like, reconnects you with yourself.
yeah. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about it because I think that when I tried to do the artist way by myself, like I was really thinking about it like as a writer and as a
Yep.
musician and as a someone who just loves to like
Yep.
make
Create.
make and do things.
Mhm.
But who has like like full-time job that requires lots of mental and time space and all of that. And I think when I did it the first time, I was really thinking about it from the perspective of like
Mhm.
capital A artist way.
Yep.
And what I loved about doing it with introspective spaces was that it was this gathering of people who were like, I'm not a capital A artist, but I thought this sounded cool. And so it was this really lovely gathering of folks who didn't necessarily, some people really self identified as writers or as musicians or as painters or whatever. But there was also folks who were just like, I don't know, I'm going to try something and explore and see what happens and identify what creativity means for me. And I think that that is such a I could immediately recognize it even on our very first session together where I was like, "Oh, this is different."
Oh, we appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
We really try.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that we don't want people to like be like, "Oh, I don't identify as like this capital A artist, so I don't need to make space for creativity." And so I think that's us the fundamental shift that creativity is an inherent part of being human.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
But you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe how hard it is to believe that. I mean, you do know how hard it is to believe that, like, to come to that place where you believe that everybody's creative, like, a part of me still struggles with that, but that's the journey that we're on. Like, Anu and I don't have a creative background, and, like, we
Mhm.
counted ourselves out of that race a long time ago, and we hit upon this by accident, really just trying to find ways to for healthcare workers to access our stories and our spirituality and our values. This has been that kind of backdoor accidental interest, and we've fallen like head over heels in love with the power of creativity to help us all explore these rich inner worlds and talents and gifts that we all have. So
So I
yeah,
think
thank
one
you
thing
for
that's
naming
funny,
that.
Laura, I would
Mhm.
say like both of us before we became our healthcare roles really did have a very creative identity. I mean,
That's
you were a
true.
professional Irish dancer
That's true.
before you became a
I'm
nurse.
sorry, what?
Yes, Laura doesn't talk about it. I was a photographer, like very extensively, like very into photography many years.
That's
And then we both
yeah.
became healthcare workers. And then we're like, oh yeah, I guess we kind of have this interest in
Yeah.
creativity. I
Yeah.
wonder where it comes from. And now we like think back and we're like, oh, we actually were these creative beings. We went into healthcare, felt like, "Oh, those things are frivolous, like, they're not productive, like, it's, like, not a good use of my time." Now, on the other side, we're like, "Wait a minute, those are things that make life."
Mhm.
And so, like, that's so important for us to bring back, and it only makes us better as clinicians, as people, as, like, community members. But I think we both, even Laura and I were like, "Oh, yeah, we have been creative people."
Mhm.
So, so you all are gonna be amused by this because I was a professional actor when I was in high school.
What?
Yeah, totally different life. And, I had thought I would wanna be a doctor, and then, my agent would be like, "Well, you can play one on TVs, that's fine." And I was just like, "You guys know that's not the same thing, right? Like, it's not
Are
the
you sure
same." I
you know
mean,
that? Yeah.
I'm so I loved being an actor. I thought it was so fun. There was
Yeah.
lots of reasons why I decided not to stay in that industry. And when I decided to go to medical school, there is this sense of like, well, you don't have time for
Yeah.
that. And in fact,
Mhm.
this sense that like if I allow myself to keep even part of myself that is created, even part of myself that loves and appreciates music, that is really into performance, all of those things, that somehow you're then inherently never going to succeed
Yeah.
in this very like intense job that we've all gone into. And I think that it sounds like for both of you, there's this living in that tension. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I have loved, I did a lot of musical theater, and being a pediatric anesthesiologist, let me tell you, every Disney song is a Broadway tune. And
Yes.
I sing to many children and I perform in the
Aw.
hallways before
Yeah.
they go to sleep. And then, once they're anesthetized, it's all business. But
Right.
but there are these
Yeah.
ways that our creativity shows up, and I remember, for example, as a child needing to go see a dermatologist for something when I was, like, 8 years old, and I was so afraid, and
Mhm.
I had a problem with my hand, and, the the doctor drew he was, like, drawing cartoon characters for me
Mhm.
on the paper on the exam table, as part of getting to know me, which I still remember that and how
Mhm.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
remember being like, "Oh, this doctor is like a really good cartoonist. That's impressive." Because my parents were artists. So my parents were both fine artists. My dad is a sculptor, who ended up becoming he worked as a construction worker to support our family. But in so many ways, I had seen how living an artist's life was very challenging for my parents, was very
Mhm.
challenging for our
Mhm.
for our family in lots of ways, and so there was a danger in that when I was like, "Well, I really would like to have safety and financial
Yeah.
security, and I would like to
Yep.
be certain that we will
Yep.
not lose our home," and all of those things, those all I think also get wrapped up in this relationship between our professions and our creativity,
Totally.
um, and you certainly see it on this app when people are like, "Well, the reason that artists are starving is because we have this capitalist system that doesn't value art." And so, all of that I think is part of this relationship that you all are talking about the relationship between, capitalism and healthcare and the ways that it is extracting from us as human beings and not necessarily helping us to be the best human beings we can be for other human beings.
Totally. And one thing that Laura and I love about creativity too is like we feel like it's like essential for building that radical muscle of imagination.
Mm,
And so this is definitely something that Adrienne Marie Brown talks a lot about, like how all organizing is science fiction. And so I think about how as healthcare workers, like so many of us can just feel really resigned to like the system existing as it is. And so I think from this like a liberatory perspective, we think creativity is really important because how can we imagine a different way of being if we don't have the capacity to be creative? And like many of us lose that like over our training, like to survive. We're working, like in my residency, like my last year was 6 months of night shifts. And so
Well,
when by the time I came out, I was like, what part of my soul still exists? And took a long time to come back. And so I think about like now working in a county system where things are very bureaucratic and we witness how inequitable our world is every day. I think
mhm,
creativity helps me be like, I don't have to settle for this reality. Like
yeah.
we can imagine things to be different.
mhm,
Well, and I love this idea of radical imagination because this is actually a key feature when I do moral distress and moral injury interventions for healthcare workers. Is
Mhm.
you're trying to take people who feel helpless, right? Who feel like I can't change the system. There's nothing I can do. I have no power. I have no authority. I'm just stuck. And trying to get people out of that stuck space through figuring out like what action can I take.
mhm,
And there's a point in these sessions where I'm like, let's engage in some magical thinking. What is the wildest, craziest thing that you can come up with?
mhm.
People never, by the way, come up with things that are all that wild because we're so
Yeah.
unskilled at allowing ourselves to tap into that creativity. And so I'm like, if
Mhm,
you could wave a magic wand, what would
mhm.
happen? And it feels scary to even engage in that
Totally.
sometimes for folks because you're like, well, but I know that it's not possible for me to make it so that all of our unhoused patients have housing. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's not something we can do in this session. But what are things we can do that are in
Totally.
relation to that and in service of that and a baby step towards some sort of justice in the situation?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, all those questions are like, I mean, questions that Julia Cameron asks throughout the book. Like each chapter at the end has like 10 activities or questions, and a lot of them are, she calls it like excavating like buried dreams. Like, what do
Mhm.
you actually really want? And also that magical thinking of like, if you could be anyone, like, what are
Mhm.
5 different professions that you would want to be? And she talks about like, turn off your thinking brain, go as fast as you can. Like, how can we override that hyper
Mhm.
rational intellect that we are in all the time? And I think that's where art and creativity interrupts that rational thinking, because you have to slow down to like really access these different um like imaginary lives or
Mhm.
imaginary ways of being. So but yeah, it's just how do we get out of that hyper adult, hyper independent, hyper, you know, individualist way that we've been trained by both medical healthcare training, but also a lot of us come from backgrounds in healthcare that caused us to choose healthcare, perhaps that where we did have
Mhm.
to like parentify early or what have you, like just adjusting like what you shared about your childhood, Alyssa. Like we all bring those different kind of stories and about I'll make art when I like have enough money or like when I'm
Mhm.
stable or um we hear these stories from parents and culture and society of like being a
Mhm.
writer. In my parents' mind, that was the most despicable, worrisome thing I could ever express.
Mhm.
A death sentence. And so we share. Julia Cameron helps us like explore all those. Where do we get that messaging? Like, who told us that? Like, really setting apart
Mhm.
time to deconstruct like how you see your current profession, your world. Your
Mhm.
spirituality and how you approach life. So yeah, this it just makes room for those bigger questions of how did I actually develop this worldview?
Yeah, and that was something I also really appreciated about the cohort that I was in was really this openness in the group to many of us came from different spiritual backgrounds, different family dynamics, different professions, and yet there was really this deep and profound openness to have
Mhm.
curiosity about each other,
Mhm,
and
Mhm.
not to say like, well, that's wrong, or like,
Mhm.
ah,
mhm, mhm. I think sometimes my critic is like, "That is so dumb that you need, like, a witness or somebody to applaud you for writing for 5 minutes today," or, like, these tiny micro interventions, like, but there is something so powerful about just having, and that's the design of this group, and, Julia Cameron says success occurs in clusters, like, we are social animals, like, we need that witnessing. We need somebody to see
Mhm.
us, and in order to be seen, you have to let yourself be seen.
Totally.
well, and I think that that's so profound in healthcare, because I certainly can't speak for either of your training, but like in a
Mhm,
lot of ways, if you are visible, it is because you did something wrong, you did something
Mhm.
bad, you
mhm,
did something
mhm,
unsafe. Like, and so
mhm,
those were the things that got you attention, which was largely negative. Whereas if you were doing things well, there's this idea that like keep your head down,
yep,
do a great job, and be
mhm,
invisible.
mhm,
And I think that in so many ways, that inner critic that you just described, healthcare is real good at ratcheting that up.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Turn it up
yeah,
to 11.
yeah. Yeah, and even, like,
Totally.
we're demanded, perfection, and for good reason, like, there's
Sure.
humans' lives at stake, but then you turn that on yourself,
Mhm.
like, you're in for a nightmare.
Well, yeah,
Um,
like it's really important, for example, that I am at aiming for perfection when I
right.
intubate somebody
Yes,
so that they are
exactly.
alive
Yep.
at the
Right.
end of their surgery. It is not as important that when I come home that I hold myself to that exact same standard when I decide to play guitar. Like,
Right.
that makes no sense.
Right, right, and that's like a muscle to try to, like, delineate that, like, you have to practice
Totally.
and, like, deconstruct it and notice it in order to kind of, let yourself, try these creative acts. Yeah,
Well,
I
and it's
think
the go ahead.
I think you're somebody that leads with such whimsy, and, like, your
Mhm.
Broadway songs and, like, Unicorn Day, and that's highly visible, and it brings me back to the definition that Anu and I found in the literature about moral distress, like, moral agency, one author described as, like, risking vulnerability, and
Mhm.
I like to think of that also as, like, risking being who you really are, risking
Mhm.
authenticity, risking whimsy, like, it's a risk to be that person, and but yeah,
I
like,
mean, this
it
is
leaves an impact on your
yeah. And
eight-year-old psyche, you know?
for sure. Well, and that whimsy is actually part of why I went into pediatrics, because
Mhm.
I loved cardiac anesthesia, man. They're doing some
Mhm,
wacky,
mhm,
awesome stuff in cardiac surgery. I thought it was so cool. It's technically awesome. It's very
mhm,
tough. And I'm very tough. Not that you would know. But I was very, I love being I like doing hard things.
yeah,
That's what I'm into. And but when I thought about did I the future life that I wanted in healthcare, which I
mhm,
knew was going to be
mhm,
very difficult. And there's a lot of people who are afraid of taking care of children because it is inherently
yeah,
vulnerable
yeah,
to
for sure,
engage and take care of other people's kids, as you
yeah,
you all know. Um, but you can't be like that whimsical with like adult people who are
mhm,
having surgery. Some of them you can, but kids, they're open to whimsy, and it is in fact
mhm,
expected. And so that
mhm,
was,
mhm,
I think, a choice that I made in early in my
mhm,
career to say, okay, maybe I should stop suppressing this and stop being
Mhm.
quite so externally tough, because it's exhausting.
yeah,
Totally. I mean, as a fellow pediatrician, I totally feel you. I feel like that's just Pete's culture. Is like we have to be a little bit more tapped into our inner child. But I do
Yeah.
think the flip side is sometimes our perfectionism ramps up even more because
mhm,
we also know the weight of what we do is
mhm,
that, we're taking
mhm,
care of people's children.
mhm, mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think adults deserve more whimsy. I feel
I
bad
Totally.
agree,
for
I
I feel
I
agree.
bad
want
for
it.
adults.
There
Yeah.
I know.
I started my nursing as a surgical oncology nurse, and there was a surgical fellow on my floor who would recite poetry to every patient. Like,
Oh,
when he would do their update, he would also, like, give
oh
them a
my
verse.
gosh. That's a dream.
I know.
Wow.
I know,
That's
that left such an impact on me. I was like, "Wow." So
so
there's room for these little tiny micro moments. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, that's beautiful. When it reminds me of when there are, like, musicians who come to the hospital, and, like, we have a medical student who's a really gifted cellist
Mhm.
Mm.
and will sometimes come in and play cello for the patients. It's just so cool.
Yeah, my brother's a PM&R physician, and he's a musician too, and so he would come in during medical school, he would just play ukulele, like, at nursing homes, and he, like, worked a lot really closely with the music therapists that were available in the cancer center, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's, like, a whole part of his life that he gets to integrate into his clinical practice," and I think it's just an example of, like, it feels so impossible sometimes to change, like, healthcare system at a large, but then I think we forget all the places where we do have agency. And so even, like, at my job in the county hospital, like, I'm my way of, like, showing up a little bit different is I'm very open with my patients about my own lived experience as a parent because I take care of newborns and am really upfront about, like, yeah, this is, like, what I struggled with, like, this is what I did for my breastfeed pumping, and I'm just one person. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And that shows up for a lot of different people, and I think they at my work, they they tolerate my, um, creative solutions to things that I don't think should exist in a certain ways, and so I think our creativity has very real impacts on our clinical practice that we don't get to really explore.
Well, and I think, what you were just sharing really reminds me of, trauma informed care as a philosophy of care, and
Mm.
how, when you're trying to co-create something with a patient, it requires creativity. It
Yeah.
Yes.
requires you to, deeply listen to the other person and to listen for meaning, not just, listen for
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
opportunity to talk. And thinking about you being able to engage in that shared experience with your patients, like, it's such an example of that co-creative energy and spirit, really, really manifesting.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have given myself as much permission. I think if earlier in my career, but I think now I'm just like, "You know what? Like, the system as it exists, like, is not working." And so I think we just need creative solutions and to be intentional about how we do it. Sorry, Laura, I think I
Well,
interrupted you.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just like, I think bringing your whole self is like your superpower that you bring to the bedside. But like you said, we've been trained to just stamp out our individuation or character. We all wear a uniform. The patients are in a different uniform. Like everybody has a role in a box and a checklist. And so I think when you can access those parts of yourselves and have the vulnerability to bring them, like more magical things happen. And I hope that our groups can be like a small testing ground for that, like where you start to test, like what is it like if I bring both parts of myself, to this group of peers of healthcare workers, like, oh look, they accept me and they're not making fun of me and this is great. Okay, maybe I can try this like out, in the real world as well. Just that muscle of bringing all your quirks, all your talents, to the world.
Well, and it makes me think as well about, I think that when you are looking for creative outlets, you kind of, like, suss that out at work. You're
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
"Oh,
Yeah.
oh, there's this."
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm just thinking back to, even being a resident, and one of the surgeons was an opera singer. Like, that was his fun thing to
Love.
do, and I mean, and this was, like, a very serious person, like, in a lot of ways,
Wow.
as you would imagine from a neurosurgeon. But they were really into this. Was their hobby. It was not a secret. It was a huge part of who they were. It was part of their identity, and I I never asked him, did he think of himself as, like, a neurosurgery slash singer, or, like, I don't know how he sort of identified, but seeing somebody who was clearly taken very seriously at work, who was clearly doing excellent work, and who had clearly, openly, and intentionally not only allowed himself to keep this very core part of his life before becoming a surgeon, but to be able to really integrate it into his life. And I think
Mhm.
that we need to see role models like that. And
Yeah.
when we find like, I love it. Oh, I love finding out when I'm like, oh, you
Secret
do
life.
You have a
Yes.
secret life where you do super complicated needle stitch? Like, tell me everything.
Love.
Yeah.
Or I love that.
Yeah.
I love finding that
It
stuff out about
I
people.
I had that moment yesterday at work when I invited one of my nurse colleagues to join the Artist Way, and, she has a secret life as a hip hop dancer. I'm like, "What? I've known you for 3 years, and you are off, like, in an adult hip hop crew performing on stage?" I'm
Amazing.
like, I had no idea. It made my day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
like
so joyful.
well, and I feel like with the Artist Way for healthcare workers, you're really inviting people to tap into that in a new way and to create this community around um, these creative acts that are just really meaningful.
Thank you. I wanna what are you bringing to your work? Like, what does it look like for you right now, Alyssa? Like, what's how are you bringing creativity into your practice?
Um,
Or is how's your art nourishing you? Or tell me.
well, I think that um, and again, there's always been this tension of like, what do you spend your time doing?
Totally.
I spend, as you can imagine, I spend a lot of time writing for this Substack, and so I find
Mhm.
that to be really,
Yeah.
really creative. And I'm doing research for another project that's very creative focused, so that I really enjoy that. But the other thing that I love is like I took up piano in when I turned 40.
Mm.
Love.
I'd always wanted to learn how to play piano. I always wanted to know how to read music. Despite being musical my whole life and like doing tons of choir and playing guitar and all of that, I did not know how to read music, and that was something I'd always
Mm.
wanted to know how to do. And one of my kids wanted to play piano, and so suddenly there was this permission to like buy a keyboard.
Mm. Mm.
And it's
Totally.
silly. It is silly that I needed a child, my child, to tell me that he wanted to have a toy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Ironically,
You're
I
like,
am the
all
only
right.
person. I am the only person in the house that is still playing piano, by the way. Years later, and but it gives me great joy to suck at
Mhm.
something. I
Love.
love
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
choice
Mhm.
to say I am at the top of my game as a pediatric
Yeah.
anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
It took getting to be almost 40 to be like I am a really good doctor.
Yeah.
And obviously wanting to maintain that and hold on to
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Um but the privilege of saying I can be an excellent physician, I can bring my best self to work,
Mhm.
and it is totally awesome to learn how to do something where I will be total
Mhm.
garbage. And not, I mean, I
Totally.
feel like that sounds bad, but I
No.
love sucking at something new. I think it is such an exciting opportunity to be like, wow, this is what it's like to be a real learner again from
Mhm.
the beginning.
Mhm.
I know. We love learning. I feel like that's a healthcare thing. I like went to my first hip hop class after having my son like a couple weeks ago, and I did a lot of hip hop before he was born. And I was like, "Oh man, it feels so good to be in the beginning stages of learning something." Like it's vulnerable because you're like the part of you is like, "Oh, I wish I was already good," that yearning to be like, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to be a protege at hip hop." And then the other part of me that is like, honestly, it's just so fun to be a little anonymous and, like, nobody knows, like, what I do, and it doesn't matter what I do. Like, I get to just be
Yeah.
a person with other persons, and we're just here on this shared interest. And I think that, for me, has been pretty radical to be like, "Oh, yeah, like, this part of myself that's not a doctor is a part that needs to be celebrated and loved," and I have to really nourish that part so I can go back and be able to do the doctor thing in a meaningful
Yeah.
way.
That's
I
something
love
that
that.
that you talked about in the past, Melissa, that really stuck with me. I don't know if it was in one of our groups or not, but you said how you're on this path of like I wish I could remember how you said it because it really hit me, but like equally valuing your doctor life and your other life. Like
Mhm.
they've been unequal for a long time, and like your current goal is just like valuing that at the same level and
Mhm.
giving that space, and that just really like the authenticity with which you express that really struck me.
Yeah. I wish I knew what I said. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
But I think also, and I think for many of us who, we live in a country that values work. They
Yeah.
value labor.
Yeah.
you are your labor. Your only value is your labor. It's part of why we suck so bad at community with
Yeah.
people with disabilities, because we're like, well, if you can't work, like, what are you even here for?
What do you
And I hate that so much.
Mm.
And I finally, in terms of reflecting on the role that my own labor plays in my life, it's like it is, and I'm an anesthesiologist, so I love a gas reference, like that works for me. But that work is this volatile gas that will fill any space that you give it. And so I
Totally.
try to
Mhm.
sometimes imagine, like, what would it look like if I just compressed that gas into an e-cylinder the way that I do everything else? And what if I stopped letting it just fill every part of our lives? And that was something I think with the pandemic that also made such a big difference, is even though I was still going into the hospital and doing, anesthesia in the hospital and all of that. So much of my ethics work was really limited to our house, and my kids were here, and my husband was here, and the dog was here, which is great. Except that it also meant that, like, my kids know way more about my work than I think I had ever really intended, and in some ways that's cool, and in other ways, like, that's messed up because this
Yeah.
job is not normal.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I always think about that with my kid. I'm like, how much to share? Yeah.
I know.
To protect their childhood, but also this is what it's like. So, but yeah, that's another thing I love about the Artist Way is it's intergenerational. There's a lot of parents, there's people without kids, and we hope that we can design it so that wherever you are, whatever stage, people can access it. And we have a group for new parents like right
Mhm.
now,
Oh,
which is very
yeah.
counterintuitive. And that's when I first came across the Artist Way when I was just had my second, and my friend coerced me into it. I was like, I don't have time. Like, I just had a baby. Hello, like this is in Alyssa's words, it's bonkers. Like this is
Mhm.
should not do this. And then I did it at this stage in my life, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I've never had more time. Like I've never had more opportunity to be an artist. Like this is the perfect time to be an artist. Like it just flipped that script 180 of like, oh, I'm a mom, so I can't. But it was actually like, no, this is such a beautiful time to express and be artistic. And so yeah, I think that's our biggest barrier is as healthcare workers is just like our perception of time. It's real, but also there
Totally.
is also like a twilight zone. And as a spiritual person, I do believe that there is some kind of like unmaking of time
Mm.
that you can kind of walk into when you like put yourself there. So yeah, so we have the new moms or postpartum, and then we also have like asynchronous what like so people just want to join by WhatsApp and not join a live group. We're also playing with it this time. Before we had like you had one assigned group, but now we're like if you need to make it up, you can drop into another group. We have
Mhm.
national
Oh,
groups. Yeah, yeah. So that because we're all on shift schedules and
Totally.
hard to make that repetitive time. So yeah, we're trying to make it more accessible, but also acknowledge that time is a real limitation. But if you do step through that portal, I mean, that's why I still do this. Like Anu and I hate marketing. We hate inviting people. Like we're inviting people right now for this
So
fall cohort.
uncomfortable.
It's awful. Every day I'm so unhappy. Like it sucks. It's like kind of being like part of an MLM scheme. I'm like, how did I end up here? But
I
but it's like
know.
an MLM for, joy and creativity. It's
exactly.
I
not
But
like
what's like
know.
weird
it's not like dish soap or whatever.
But what keeps me going is like we're all just gluttons for transformation and like we've witnessed it and it's like I will do anything to maintain my front row seat to like literally seeing so many people be like my life is fundamentally different. Like I approach my life
Mm.
differently and for the
Mhm.
better and yeah, so it's a risk to step through that portal, but I mean that's why Anu and I are here doing the thing that we hate. So
We're
we can
trying.
get the place that we love.
I
I
mean, I
mean,
think
I appreciate you both coming because I knew it would be a
This is
little like,
fun. This is
but I
fun.
yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
I'm such a super fan, so
I mean, we appreciate you, Alyssa.
Yeah.
I mean, we're healthcare workers at heart, like, I think
Yeah.
everything we've learned about
Mhm. Mhm.
building our organization, like, our fundamental thing was, like, how do we not build a replica of a
Yeah.
healthcare system? And
Yeah.
you're like, "But that doesn't exist, so we're just gonna have to make it up as we go along if we wanna create something that's, like, actually, like, non-hierarchical and values aligned." And
Mhm.
so part of that has been painfully learning, like, how do we get the word out if we
Yeah.
are a two-person organization who are still active healthcare workers. So
Mhm.
we're very grateful
Yep.
that you brought us on here and so we
Yes.
can talk about it. And
I tell everybody, I send a lot of emails. I'm like, "Do you guys
I
wanna
know.
try this radically different thing that you've never tried before? It's awesome."
You're so
I
Um,
good.
know.
Thank you.
We
You
appreciate you.
yeah,
well,
there's no
I mean,
words.
I'm fundamentally loyal. I always tell people I'm loyal AF.
Mhm.
Um, and, I really believe in the work that you 2 are doing. I think that it is transformational, and I think it's so amazing how you have operationalized this outside of an organization, because I think that it's, you're doing something that is different. I mean, and even in the fact that in my cohort, I mean, I think over half of us came from the same hospital, and
Mhm.
yet none of us, well, that's not true. There is one person from my department, I
Mhm.
already liked her.
Yeah.
Um, but there were all sorts of people that I never would have met because they worked at different parts of the organization, and frankly, if it had been offered in my organization,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that
Yeah.
I would have felt it was for me. And
Totally.
so
Mhm.
Yeah.
you 2 have found this kernel, and
Mhm.
I am just loving
Mhm.
seeing it grow.
Mhm.
And I just hope that, even if a few people who are on here
Mhm.
find
Mhm.
you all,
Mhm.
the Introspective Spaces website also, by the way, I must say, first of all, it's gorgeous,
Mhm.
obviously.
Thank you.
Um, stunning
Designed by
and
another healthcare worker, so yeah.
It's true.
amazing,
Mhm.
amazing. And one of the things for folks who are listening in today, if you go to the website, I love seeing how you all have used language to be inclusive. Like, what does it look like to build this? Again, you don't want to build a model that's like all the things that we don't like about
Yeah.
Mhm.
healthcare, or that we don't like about capitalism, or that we don't like about whatever. And seeing how it is that you both have tried to really operationalize that in the building of this little nonprofit that you've made
Mhm.
is,
Mhm.
I love it. I love seeing it. I go and I read it and I'm like, "Oh, they're really doing inclusivity in a way that I feel like,
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities for us all to continue to learn." And
Mhm.
it's, to me, makes it so easy for me to recommend what you have to other folks, because I can tell how much you care about
Mhm.
making it so that it is not just this replica of the stuff we've already done.
Mhm. Mhm.
We appreciate that,
Yeah.
Alyssa. I think that is our deepest hope and our intention with everything that we do is like we want to be a part of this reimagination work, and we want introspective
Mhm.
spaces to be that, which is both like such a privilege to get to do and also so hard because we're like creating the path as we walk it. And so part of us is like, well, we don't know. Like, we don't know exactly what this looks like. And even Artist's Way, our decision to do it so experimental, we're like, will people even be into this? And then for us to kind of think about, like, how do we price this? Like, how do we make it equitable? And we have this interdisciplinary cohort. And so I think we've had to really think about like what are the ways that people can access this in a way that allows for sustainability for the organization and also like acknowledges that people are coming across the medical hierarchy with different access points. And so at the very least we can say we've given a lot of things a lot of thought, and so we really try and are very open to feedback, but we're grateful to do this. Like, I mean, while healthcare is where it is, we have to take care of each other. I feel like there is no
Mhm.
other option. And
Mhm.
I think for Laura and I were like, like this work is our an extension of our patient care by caring for healthcare workers. Like we're caring for all the people that they care for too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that what you've done with and this is a very like niche thing for any of you who are listening who do not have to do continuing education.
Yeah.
This may be hard for you, but I thought it was very creative the way that you have adjusted the pricing based on like how many like education units, because we have to pay for all of these units that you have to do, and you have to prove to the state that you've continued to learn about how to do your job.
Mhm.
And I love that because I know that by offering CEUs, it means that people are actually able to, like, if they have a fund through work
Yeah.
that is meant for that, they actually can
Yeah.
use it to be able to participate in this very generative, radical reimagination of, their connection to work.
Yeah, that's our
Mhm.
whole Trojan horse approach. Is
Yes.
that
Yeah. That's our little, like, rocket moment. Yeah.
it's like we want no one to pay for it. Yeah, that's our
That's
ideal.
our goal, yeah. We want Stanford to pay for it, ideally.
I mean,
Yeah.
as far as it's
Mm.
well, it's frustrating, right? Because I I didn't become a healthcare worker because I thought it was gonna be financially rewarding. I mean, it is, and I
Yeah.
very much appreciate, like,
Yeah.
the
Having a
having that,
stable life, yeah.
but my goodness, I would so much rather that I had patients who were housed and
Yeah.
Totally.
children who always had food to eat and,
Mhm.
all of those things. And so I think it is challenging when, what you both are trying to do in terms of this radical reimagining, but understanding that you're still existing in this capitalist system, and, like, how is it that you deal with that tension? And
Yeah.
I see both of you bringing that creativity to it in a way that I think is very inspirational. I would love to be able to just make all of it go away and make it free,
Thank
but
you. Yeah,
also
yeah.
your time isn't free in this
Mhm.
system that we have.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you for naming that. I think that's where a lot of the pain of it comes from, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think just acknowledging that frame, it's like, "Oh, that's why I'm feeling that. Okay, like, carry on," like,
yeah.
Mhm.
just
Well, and this is how I've been trying to think about,
yeah.
the moral injury clinic and the moral distress and moral injury interventions that I do, which,
Yeah,
the ones that I do that are part of work, it's just part of my job.
right.
I mean, I've sort of made it part of my job. Nobody
Yeah.
really asked me to do
Totally.
that. Um, I was just like, well, let's do it. Um, but it's hard when you're like, I have this really important thing that I think will genuinely make people's lives better. And how do I do this in a way that's sustainable? And I think it's challenging. Um,
Mhm.
well, so we're coming, we're getting towards the end. When if people who are on here, so first of all, who can join? Who can be in the Artist Way program?
Yeah, we keep it pretty broad. I think we say anyone who intersects with the medical industrial complex, if those are words that resonate with you. That's how we think about it. But like, in
Just a little Mia
practicality,
Mingus in there.
I know. So we're just think about it that way. But like healthcare workers, mental health professionals, occasionally we'll have public health professionals, especially right now. I think
Mhm, mhm,
very much welcome in our
mhm,
community because it's really a lot of tension and hard to grapple with what's
mhm,
going on. And so I think we keep it pretty broad, but the healthcare worker experience is centered. And so that's what a lot of the reflections and the way that we talk about it is very much like around people who engage with patients or kind of work directly in like healthcare, private practice kinds of settings. So as long as you're okay with that and know that that's centered and like intersect with the healthcare system in a way. I don't know, Laura, if you'd add anything
I
else.
would just add, we also, like, love retired people, like,
Yes.
because they can, like, pour into our, just I don't know, we just love that intergenerational aspect, so, like, we want
Yes.
students, new grads, like, all the way up
Mhm.
to retired, because it's just so fascinating to see that, like, exchange of experience and,
That is
salve.
That is such a wonderful thing to point out. I'm in a group called the Pegasus Physician Writers
Mhm.
Mhm,
through Stanford, and it is intergenerational. And there is a bunch of retired physicians who
Mhm.
are in it,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I love being able to tap into the wisdom of the
Yeah,
elders.
yeah,
People who've
Yes.
seen it,
yep,
and the wisdom of people who are younger than me who are
yep,
coming into this from a new space. And
mhm.
I love that you named that.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, we're just so siloed in every way, including that way too, so, but
And
yeah, those are who's it's for. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Alyssa.
No, no, no. And so when does this next cohort start? How do people sign up?
Yeah, it starts September 8th, so we're really trying to nail it down with the pat in the next 2 weeks, kind of we're
Mhm.
already placing people in groups, so August 25th is kind of what we named as our final date to register, and then start September 8th for 12 weeks, um, so
And the
we're
12 weeks flies by. I thought it would
yeah,
feel so
yeah,
long, and I was
I
like, "Wait, it's
know,
over? How'd that happen?"
I know. It's kind of an intimidating commitment at first, you're like, "What? 12 weeks?" But yeah.
Yeah, and
go by.
the only things I'll add is, like, we have a lot of cohorts, like, as Laura mentioned, kind of, like, with our hope that we can group people a little bit more geographically, but we also
Mhm,
have 3, like, nationwide kind of drop-in sessions
mhm,
that we list, and then I think our cohorts this season will be, we have 2 in Los Angeles, like, West LA and East LA. Throughout the Bay Area, we have a San Francisco, Oakland, a Bay Area Peninsula, which Alyssa is joining, so anyone who wants to hang out with Alyssa. And then Sacramento, Portland, Austin, East Coast. And then the 2 affinity groups that we're trying this time are like a pregnancy, postpartum, early parents group that I'm co-facilitating with my friend Nima, who's also a peds hospitalist. And that group will be primarily text-based, like video messaging, audio messaging, just for like the practicalities of people's time. And you can drop in to any of the sessions that are open. And then we just opened our queer and healthcare affinity group. And so I had someone reach out who really wanted to create this community for
mhm,
specifically for folks in healthcare and mental health who identify as queer. So really, really excited about that group. That's been a dream of mine to exist since we started the program. So there's a lot of different ways to join us, and we're always open to answer questions. Our website has a very maybe too detailed
yes,
overview
yeah,
of it. And then I saw someone just ask how much it is to join. And so the community ticket, there's 3 tiers of tickets, which we talked a little bit about for accessibility. And so the community ticket, which is open to everyone, which comes with 4 continuing education credits through the Board of Registered Nursing, is $357, which is about $30 a week, essentially, for the 12 weeks. And then we have an institutional tier for folks who have institutional funds, and then a sponsorship tier for anyone who's able to give back for scholarships. And then for folks for whom finances are a limitation, we offer mutual aid scholarships, and you can just reach out to us about that
mhm,
directly.
Awesome.
mhm.
Anything else people should know?
I'm trying to think.
Oh, well, I mean, something new this time is we put out a call to facilitators and we had an overwhelming response.
Yes.
And so I think that's just a really exciting part of our work too. It's like you see Anu and I here, but really there's a team of like, I guess, 10 or 15 other healthcare workers who are stepping into this role as well. And I think that's foundational to our belief that all healthcare workers are healers and that we're often like stymied in that in our roles sometimes by
Mhm.
the system. And so I get so much joy from seeing all these folks who are joining us and holding space for their community of healthcare workers. So yeah, we have a very awesome crew that we have not put them up on the website, but they're behind the scenes. So it's
Yeah.
them as well.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate both of you coming and doing this very uncomfortable and creative work of sharing
No, this is so
of your
fun.
program.
This is
You're
the
the best.
part. This is the fun part. Yeah. Any chance to hang out with Alyssa, hearts everywhere, all over my journal. So yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is fantastic. For anybody who is, who's logged in, I will absolutely put in the show notes information on how you can get to the Artist Way website. Make sure that if you're interested in signing up, do so ASAP because it sounds like end of August is when registration closes. I'm doing a cohort again. I never thought when I did it the first time, I was like, I'm going to do this because I'm friends with them, and I'm
Yes.
just going to do
That's
it.
why everybody does it.
It is why everyone does it. It's
Um,
pretty true.
but like I'm a convert. I continue to benefit from the 12 weeks that I spent in Laura's cohort. I am so excited to sign up for again. And again, I was like, I don't have time to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Um,
Same. I don't have time for this either.
Literally.
Well, yeah,
amazing.
thank you so much, Alyssa. You're
We
a
appreciate
goddess, and we
you.
walk in your footsteps. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you both
Yeah.
so much. Take
Yeah.
care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.